unfortunately. I'm Steve Rowett from UCL. Welcome. Great to chair this session. I think we're going to have a bit of fun. The format is going to be, we have two provocative speakers who are going to challenge our thinking around the motion that will shortly, I hope, be displayed on the screen. They are Jeni Brown, who's the IT Training Manager at the London School of Economics, and Jim Tyson, Senior IT Trainer at UCL. We sit together. That doesn't mean he gets any favouritism. It may work in exactly the opposite way. We also have a wonderful panel here. You've seen them present today, who are going to challenge their thinking, ask them questions, move the discussion along, and I hope put them on the paces, put them through their paces on their feet a bit, because it's quite a nice lecture theatre, this. It's quite gladiatorial almost, with everyone looking at you from all sides. So we hope we have a bit of fun, you know, making them sweat. Can I also welcome our panel? Leo Appleton from Goldsmiths, Tim Rose from Abingdon and Witney College, Fiona Harvey from University of Southampton, Mikhail Garcia from LinkedIn, and Lawrie Phipps from Jisc. That was a memory test. The format will be, Jeni and Jim will have 8 minutes each to present, one in favour, one against the motion. We will get this motion on screen, I promise. My cable's not connected. During their 8 minutes, the panel can challenge them using the buzzers, but they can only challenge once during that 8 minutes, so they have to think of their most important point to challenge on, and they can challenge with a comment, a question, whatever you wish. You can just, you know, flatly disagree if that's what you wish to do. You'll get a warning: 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds and 10 seconds, and if you don't shut up after the 8 minutes, I have my whistle, which I will blow vigorously. After that, we'll move to the panel for further questions, and after that we'll open it up to the floor, and also the questions that were asked on the board outside. And you can continue to ask questions via Mentimeter using the code that will be displayed when I start the presentation here. So just to remind us, this is our topic for today. The most important reason to develop student digital capabilities is employability. So I'm going to move forward. You can add in your comments and questions. They will appear on the screen. But first I'm going to invite Jeni to take her place and talk for 8 minutes on that subject. Are you ready, Jeni?
I'm ready.
Okay, your time starts now.
Right. I'm not sure that I can talk for 8 minutes on this, to be honest. I struggled a little bit to determine what I was going to say, because it seems to me a rather obvious statement. And I think that many of the talks that we've had over the last 2 days have borne it out. And there's a lot of discussion of employability as one of the key factors in what it is that we do. But I thought I might as well use some of the time and define, for me at least, what employability is, and maybe this is an area for discussion. For me, employability talks about preparing our students with the skills, knowledge, and ability so that they can positively contribute to society through their work, whether that's paid work or unpaid work. Now, you can agree or disagree with that definition of employability. Maybe James.
It's a good thing.
But beyond that, I think it's, again, somewhat obvious that as universities and further education, our funding is dependent increasingly on our success with the employability of our students. Our reputations are linked very closely to how employable our students are. Our teaching is increasingly focused on providing students who are employable. And our students expect and demand to leave university and be able to get a job. But it's not just how things are now. I swear I did not pay Tim to give that presentation where he talked about where we're going and how the world is moving. We talk about the future and the move towards greater integration with digital technology, with a move towards full automation, and that's going to change the landscape of the skills that we need to be involved in society. So you talked about 90% of jobs needing a greater amount of digital capability in the next 20 years. And you talked about that shortage of, I think it was 3 million people to fill the jobs that will be available. And on the other side of that, we're going to have 9 million people fighting for, was it 3 million?
3 million.
3 million jobs that are lower skilled. So I think it's very clear that digital capabilities are increasingly important in all areas. And to suggest otherwise, I would say, is to ignore the reality of the modern age. Go on.
Lawrie.
I can't let it go. Sorry. It's such a rosy picture that you painted. But you've done it from an individual perspective. You've taken an individual-centred approach, and that's where you come from with employability. Education so I can get a job. Education so that I can go out and do something. I got into education because I believe it's social and public good. And I think that jobs and employability should be the work of the economy and the political context of the economy. And at the moment what we're doing is buying into an agenda of employability that is shifting responsibility from the economy and from the sorry, he's waving.
Briefly, Lawrie.
From the economy into universities. And the university's job should be to inspire and raise aspiration, not tell our students to go out and get jobs, surely.
Inspire and raise aspiration to what?
To have a life outside of university, to go on from university, not saying that's my job, but to go on and be able to do whatever it is that they want to do. And that's got to be about society and public good, not the individual.
Indeed, but is it not then government's role to create that society by which we can all live, regardless of whether or not we have paid employment?
Agreed. In the economy and in the context of the political climate. Not in
Until
our
we get there,
universities.
they all need jobs.
Our universities and colleges should be about aspiration, about society and public good.
Jeni, I encourage you to continue your argument.
I think that I may agree with you as to what should be, but I'm talking about what is. And what we do now needs to be about what is. Now, perhaps what we do is we develop the students who can go into politics and who can change our society, but that itself is a job, and they need to be employed in order to do that. I have nothing more to say. I will finish my time because I think Jim might have...
I to do it once. Come on, guys.
Would any of the panel like to challenge?
Yeah. So Jeni, if you're putting employability at the heart of the digital skills agenda, surely we're missing something fundamental about the academy, about universities, as Lawrie's just said. Why not the importance on the student experience? We're all driven by student experience in what we do, or the research agenda for the university.
So I'm not sure I understand your question.
So what I'm asking you, why employability is key for you rather than, say, the research agenda or the student experience agenda?
Well, researchers are employed
by the institution. You're not
yes,
contributing
so if
to...
you're developing their digital capabilities, you're developing the capabilities they need in their employment, are you not?
I just want to comment on, just for both of you really, but universities are here to support people to come into, to broaden their minds and look at what's happening around the world now. We have Trump. These people are not critical thinkers, and that is one of the unique skills for life.
How many of the people who voted for Trump were university educated?
Exactly, and that's the point.
76%.
But
Lie.
I can't comment anymore. Can I keep commenting? Can I keep? Oh, I can't buzz anymore. No, I just think that, but think about, it's not just employability, because those skills could be practical skills for enabling people to use machines and be able to think about what will happen in the future in terms of how we might live. But what we're asking people to do at university with the digital skills could just as well be about how you source information and how you check that these things that are being given, the facts that are being given to them are the right facts, have they been manipulated. And it's not about getting a job, it might not be about getting a job, it's about thinking for yourself and weighing up the options and the facts before you to make a decision.
I would point out that the statement is that the most important, not the only reason. So it's not the only reason to develop digital capabilities, but the most important reason. And all of those skills, being able to evaluate information, being able to critically think, all of those skills are also skills for successful employment. I myself, I'm going to steal your thunder here. I did English. The most useless, in some ways, degree for getting a job. Except that, thank you, except that those skills of critical reflection, of being able to assimilate information and to write and then to present that are excellent skills in many different jobs. Thank you.
Okay, any final quick comments from Tim or Gail?
I just think it's really important, following on from Laurie's comments, I think it's really important to kind of define what we mean by employability as well. We're talking about people graduating university and then going to work for companies, because that might have been how it was 15, 20 years ago, but actually I think the digital landscape has changed the nature of employment, and the opportunities for entrepreneurship these days is inherently linked to digital capabilities. So I think it's really important that we're actually defining first and foremost what we mean by employability. Are we talking about people going off and creating their own businesses, working for themselves online? Or are we talking about people going off and having that traditional career trajectory where you climb the corporate ladder, as it were?
Great question. I'm afraid, Jenny, your time is up.
My time is up.
So, thank you. Any comments from the guys?
I just wanted to say, I think one of the biggest things that I struggle with is the accountability piece. And I disagree with the term in terms of university only being there to broaden a student's horizon or to change, critical thinking. I think all that is important, but the world is going to change in those 3 years that they're at university. And I think more needs to be done to make sure that the people that are responsible for teaching are actually accountable to student success. I think there needs to be measurements put in place that do not exist today.
Okay, thank you. We move on to Jim. Jim, you're speaking against the motion, and your time starts now.
I started thinking about this as a comedy skit on John Henry Cardinal Newman, and lo and behold, there he appeared. But in fact, I'll come back to John Henry Cardinal Newman, and I'll start with me, because I left school after a rather difficult time. In fact, I left school just a few weeks after an interview at a provincial university, where after 10 minutes of general chit-chat about quite a lot it seemed we had in common, I was offered 2 E's to come and study classics, which appeared like a good result. I walked in 2 E's to study classics, and I think the intention probably would be that I'd be there for 3 years. I'd probably go into the law or the city or accountancy, might go into the civil service or politics. Classics at Peterhouse was considered a pretty good preparation for employability in a certain layer of society. I was lucky I escaped by being expelled. Until 1979, a tiny proportion of the population of almost any country in the world went to university. What percentage, what would you say the ceiling was in 1979 of people in Britain who would go into university on leaving school? 12%. Well, less than 20%. Who thinks it was less than 20%? Less than 15? Less than 10? Less than 5? It was less than 5%. Fewer than 5% of people would have gone from school to university in 1979. Now, work has changed since 1979. University has changed since 1979. But one way it hasn't changed is it hasn't become so that work now generally requires a university education for you to be actually capable of doing it. That isn't the case. It isn't the case that you don't need a high level of skills to do good work and get a good job. It's just the case that now you come to university apparently to get those skills. You didn't in 1979. You went to do what John Henry Newman said a university was for, which was to prepare people who were fully capable of understanding the world around them critically, of judging, of discriminating, of saying what the world should be like, and participating in a dialogue about the good life for society. One funny thing, by the way, is that John Henry Newman wrote that in the context of British universities borrowing from the Germans the idea of research. British universities have never done research. They were entirely teaching institutions until the 19th century. John Henry Newman thought this was an awful idea. He thought, like Michael Faraday, that research should be carried out in research institutes and places like that. But what happened post-1979, and I leave it to you to say what happened in 1979 that might have provoked this, is that increasingly we, the public, in that most corporate public embodiment, the state, took over the cost and burden of preparing the workforce, of upskilling the workforce so that they could be economically productive. Before that, employers ran apprenticeships, employers took you on and trained you to do the work that needed to be done at their expense. And nobody thought there was anything wrong with that. But post-1979, increasingly, the state, the public, the body civil, has taken on the expense of this preparation.
Miguel?
So, Big Four consultancies, Deloitte,
I beg your pardon?
the Big Four consultancies, KPMG, Deloitte, you know, making announcements that they no longer require a university degree.
I think that's right.
So what will be the role of universities?
I think it will be what John Henry Newman actually said it was, not only John Henry Newman, but lots of people, which is to allow people the possibility to prepare themselves for a good life. And I wanted actually to hand
How
over
will I
to
get a student to attend?
Well, I want to hand over to the people who haven't spoken, which is the students. We've heard that students are very, very concerned about employability, so I managed to get some students from Southampton to university to talk about why they come to university. And we'll just show a minute of it, if I may. Because this is what the students...
You can have. I don't think that anywhere else you'd get to meet so many people from such diverse backgrounds.
University is a great place to find out who you are and also still be a little bit of a kid, which is always kind of nice.
I think the best thing about university for me is meeting new people. It doesn't matter to an extent what you study, because all the extracurricular stuff that you get involved in, there are people who make careers out of that.
There's just so much opportunity. There's opportunity to do new things, meet new people, and study something you really, really enjoy.
It's difficult to say which is the best part of uni.
It's an experience which will really help you in terms of self-discovery. Chance to get away from your parents, I think. Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping it, because from then on they all go, thank goodness I will also get a job. One person mentioned employment there and actually said it comes out of all the extracurricular stuff, which is great. But they all spoke about quite classic reasons that people genuinely give for going to university: self-discovery, the social opportunity presented, discovering new things. In fact, quite unlike what the BCS discovered employers want when they talk about digital skills, because I went and had a look. What are the important digital skills the BCS asked employers? 97% felt that email was one of the important digital skills. 92% said word processing was next, and then spreadsheets. And 71% actually did mention social media. The vision of digital skills that we've put forward, I would actually say, is a really quite...
Sorry, what you seem to be backing up there, that digital skills are for employability. I'd suggest that your argument is living in the halcyon days of the 1970s, as with those Southampton students, and that employability has to be top of the agenda, not this need for a good life and social skills.
The question is, who is to decide that? Who's going to decide what it's for? And I wanted to get on to like who's going to decide, but I also want to bring up one thing about it being the most important, that digital skills are most important. Teaching digital skills employability. Just today I heard that Diego Gomez, Colombian guy, young Colombian man, has just after 4 years been acquitted and finally had the burden of a possible prison sentence relieved from his head because of his lack of digital skills. His education as a master's student failed to prepare him for the consequence of sharing a master's thesis online. You can't tell me in that context that the most important motivator for digital skills is get a job. It's life.
Okay, thank you. Fantastically to time there, Jim. Well done. Thank you, Jenny and Jim.
I persuaded Diego to wait and get acquitted today.
We'll now hand over to the panel for any further questions you may have. But these can be directed at Jim and Jenny, or you can discuss them amongst yourselves. You can come in too. So I'll hand over to you.
I was thinking that I know you deliberately created that statement to be provocative and to have that kind of clear cut either side, and it clearly isn't clear cut, and people have different motivations for going to university, and there are many reasons why people have to go now. You can't seriously get a job without having a degree, so there is that element to it. Ideologically wise, this utopian view of education and research. Research does mean not just learning from each other and discovering new things. It's about life-changing things. It could be about getting the cure for cancer. It could be designing some kind of engineering feat, the driverless cars, all those kind of things. I know Google are doing that, but universities work with these people too. So it is about opportunity too. And I think a side issue is, of course, if you aren't able to communicate effectively online, if you can't critically think, if you can't turn on a computer, you will be disadvantaged. So I'm not wrapping it up, I'm just saying. It's clear on my mind that I think I'd like my kids to be going to university to change the world for better, for the change for good. And if they get a job out of that, fantastic. They'll probably end up working in accountancy or something, which is a different thing. But, you know, technically they have to go in, just to get the entry level now. It's not just about getting a seat at the high table, it's about actually getting through the door. So
I think something that we haven't talked about is how is technology going to affect the decision-making process of students in terms of where they go to university. Even today now, you can have applications, algorithms that students are looking at to see how likely are they to get the type of job and career they want with that university. How likely is it that within 6 months to 1 year they will be making a certain salary, depending on the region, depending on that university. These tools are going to be affecting the decisions that students make, and that's something that we haven't considered, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Jim, Jenny, any comments on that?
Agreed.
It's a really interesting point that Miguel just made. We need to educate students that the tools, all of those digital things and platforms that are out there, and the algorithms that are being used by these companies are not neutral. And they are driving people to certain areas. They are politically biased. They are imbalanced. They are not there to be nice. They are there to drive profit. So one of our digital capabilities is to look at all of those tools and say, which ones are there to help me? Which ones can I exploit? Which ones do I want to steer away from? We have to recognise that that's a key digital capability. The algorithms that we've just been talking about are not neutral.
You look at many sources, not just one.
Jim.
Just a little comment, because somebody mentioned, you know, living in the 1970s utopia. But it's part of digital citizenship not to accept where you are, but to apply critical thinking and change it. Students aren't just born into the world to be passive, yeah, to accept that, oh, that's what it's like now. You've got to get down the mine like your dad did, or otherwise. Students, the point of enabling students is to enable them to make and articulate choices that might actually change the context of the university and work and employment. And I think that that can only be a good thing. And I don't think that it's up to any of us, by the way, to tell them what those values that they develop for the future should be. I think they're their own.
You were talking about 1979, and I left school just after 1979. And apprenticeships had pretty much disappeared at that point. And the state started to make available to companies money so that school leavers at 16 could be employed on what is now would be considered well below minimum wage. Yes, I was on a yacht At 16, I was working in a foundry pouring hot metal into sand, and I was getting paid £22.50 a week. And the government were giving companies money to actually do that. By a few years later, even that had disappeared, and the employability agenda had started to shift. And then we started to see companies, the people who are the recipients of school leavers and graduates, starting to say, well, you've got to send us trained people. You've got to send us people who are doing these jobs. They'd started to abdicate their responsibility for apprenticeships, for training, for developing their own workforces onto other people. And that's what worries me about the employability agenda now. We talk about companies telling universities and schools that they have to train the workforce. Not the workforce, the companies themselves taking responsibility for that. And that scares me.
But isn't part of that the move towards a change in what skills are required for the type of work that we need? We move away from the ability to pour hot metal to knowledge work, to work that requires critical thinking, that requires the ability to assess and work with information.
Why can't they take responsibility for helping students that they recruit to do that as well?
But isn't that originally the role of the university? Was that John Cardinal Newman's point?
I think we to pretend that before the growth of the knowledge economy, work was a matter of picking up a rock and bashing it against another rock, and that suddenly, an understanding of modus ponens and modus tolendos were required to actually get a job. But that isn't what I meant. That isn't what
it wasn't what I was suggesting.
Work has always changed. The university has always changed, and I think that's a great thing. But the question that arises in my mind is this: is that who is going to say what the values of the value of university education to students should be? And it strikes me as particularly perverse that we should be trying to dictate what that purpose is when we are asking them to pay for it and to go into debt, when actually the reality is that many of them will not be going into the knowledge economy to exciting entrepreneurial jobs, but many of them will actually be going into a quite workaday working life to discover, as many of them anecdotally I'm sure you've all heard will say, I've not gone to university, I'd be earning £10,000 more a year by now.
Well, who has asked the students? Because I know that when you ask students at LSE, and perhaps we are completely different from every other university, those students attend the LSE in order to get a job. So that is their value. That is why they are there. And I think your video is lovely, but a little bit disingenuous, because I expect that that was put together for a particular purpose, which isn't to focus on the employability aspect, but to encourage students to come to university for the wider experience. It's not necessarily why they went to university.
That's disingenuous. I went to university as a mature student after going through a career, 2 careers, and then saying, do you know what, I want to go to university because I want to learn. I want to do something wider. Not to get a better job, I was really in a good job.
Could I just make a point? I think higher education right now has created its own tension between a student experience and employability, and that the video that we saw with their students telling us really about their student experience and the things they get outside of employability is equally as important to all of us in the room as is achieving the university's mission of as much 100% employability if possible. We are still driven in that consumer society by the employability of our graduates, or by graduate employability. But we have to focus on the student experience to get them there.
Well, can I point out one of the comments that's up there about, are we guilty of perceiving the mucky business of commerce when work can give meaning and self-esteem? And I do think that's an important point. You're talking about purpose. When I defined employability before, I made a point of saying it's not just about do you go and get a job and you get a paycheck. But employability is about how you contribute, whether that's paid or unpaid, but it is the work that you do, volunteer work, paid work, your career, however you want to do it, but you are employed in doing something.
So as long as you pass time, the employability agenda has succeeded, and because we will all pass time,
Positively contribute to society.
Hildegard of Bingen undoubtedly positively contributed to society. I once had someone define entrepreneurship in such a way as that Mother Teresa was an entrepreneur, and we've now heard having a pastime employed as such a way as to justify an employability agenda. But it isn't the case. We know what the employability agenda is. We really do. I do not think that employability should not be a possible purpose, part of a purpose, one of the important aims of a university. I deny that it can ever be the most important one, because education is for the whole of life, and life is much more various than how you earn your daily bread.
But it's not about just university. We're talking about digital capabilities development.
Yeah, we are indeed, and as I said, Diego Gomez, failed completely by his university education, and because of it, almost went to jail. Now, he's an anecdotal example. Aaron Schwartz committed suicide because he had a flawed understanding, of what digital life and digital accountability and digital responsibility was. These are more important things, it seems to me, than employability. There might be more important things, and the judgment that it is the most important thing usurps the autonomy of learners.
So are you suggesting then that the most important reason to develop digital capabilities is to avoid breaking the law and ending up in jail?
I'm suggesting that the most important reason to develop digital capabilities is self-actualization.
Was that Diego's problem, self-actualization?
No, not just drop the digital from that statement.
Digital self-actualization.
No, just drop digital capabilities to...
Well, I think inevitably it's about the purpose of education, and I think that is self-actualization.
In the 6-week program that we ran, not once did I mention digital capabilities.
Yeah, well,
and the reason for that being is that I was simply, Maura and I agreed, this was about turning the students into professionals in every sense of the word. And that was way beyond digital. It was getting them to articulate their values, to understand their interests, and now that connects with their purpose. So I just want to put that out there. That was not part of it.
I think that's a really important point. We define it as digital capability, but actually it's just capabilities for life at the minute, isn't it? Where it's, for older generations, it is this whole sense of digital capabilities, but it's just equipping people for life, generally.
A lot of people, if we sort of split into sort of young people going in, and then there's mature students, and there's probably a differentiation between the motivations. But if young people are going into university, and part of the video you see there is opportunity, they're discovering more about themselves, they're getting sort of a stepping stone that's just helping them in that self-realization, lots of opportunities, but ultimately, they're going to go on and do something. Now, they'll learn, and they'll develop a direction. After they leave, if they are unemployed for the next 5 years, has the university failed?
I think so. I think there's a situation certainly in the FE college that I come from for a lot of the young learners who are getting their first exposure to the idea of university. They're speaking to careers guidance professionals, and it's posed to them. These are first generation people that are going to be going to university, first people from their family, and one of the main selling points to them is you will earn more money if you go to university. If you earn a degree, you will earn more money. And obviously, what you were saying there is that some of your learners are saying that's not the case.
I worry that actually the evidence is not entirely in, but it might not be the case that going to university earns them more money.
That's certainly how it's pitched.
We should be very careful about that. We don't want to be derelict in our duty to learners. I have absolutely no doubt. One of the most pleasing things I've ever seen in life is the transforming effect of education in lifting people out of impoverished situations and situations which can be quite dire. I'm a great fan of the Working Men's Association, the Workers' Education Association, so I know how transforming education can be, but it's life transforming. It's life transforming. It doesn't just mean that people who would otherwise have lived in poverty get a job that earns more per hour. It also means that they develop aspirations, that go beyond what they might before have seen. And I don't even mean by that a holiday in the Canary Islands rather than Brighton. I mean that if you look back and you read about what happened to the young men who went to Faraday's institutes, who by the way followed Faraday, and he'd been like a kind of chemical servant boy at the Royal Institute before becoming a scientific researcher himself. Their horizons were not raised just economically in a crude sense, but in every sense, and they had a broader appreciation of life. And I don't think it's right to prioritise employability, nor do I think it's right to rewrite the meaning of employability so that it actually means everything that's good in the world and therefore must be the correct aim of education. The employability is our aim of education. We don't know whether it's the most important, and we shouldn't.
I just want to add something. We haven't really mentioned about external drivers in terms of government initiatives. So different government initiatives have different policies, and the TEF has an element of the employability within it. So some institutions that haven't naturally had a focus on education, like the research-intensive universities, may not have been that bothered about employability had the government not been measuring them and putting them in a league table about it. So it's the, why are we interested in this? There's many of us here are actually interested because it's like that Simpsons cartoon, won't someone think of the children? It's about, I really feel that some of us really care about what happens to them, like your workshop, we get these people together, we want them to do well, but there's a bigger picture about how do we spend our time, how are we allowed to spend our time, and what are we allowed to do. And employability has a big focus because the economy, it's about capitalism, it's about all of these horrible things, we won't get political, but it's all about making money in the knowledge economy, and employability is that big thing that's kicking in at the moment with our league tables and our measurements. So.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Can I open up to the floor for any more comments or questions? You can either bring them on the Menti board or raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. Can we just wait for a microphone to come over?
I think we should avoid the temptation to be measured by the things that others wish to measure us for. We need to make our own destiny. It just seems that there's creep from primary, secondary, now to tertiary education, where the educators have been cast as the saviours of society. We have a purpose, but those who come to us also have a responsibility, to see through what they need to do. This employability stuff, it's in response to TEF. Every point mentioned here has validity, but I'm with the position that we're here to encourage critical thinkers, because the next problem that arises could be the problem that basically flummoxes, topples our civilization. We don't want people measured by a slide rule. We want original thinkers. Everybody can't be an original thinker, but the purpose of university education shouldn't be to manufacture people who think the same.
Anyone like to comment?
I agree with that.
I do want to kind of bring the scope of this back down to the original statement. This is not a debate on the purpose of university education. This is a debate about developing digital capabilities. And so I think, while I agree university education has a broad and lofty purpose, when it comes to developing digital capabilities, I think that is a much more applied and specific question.
And so does the BCS think. So it thinks it's email spreadsheets, and if that's the most important aim of digital capabilities, what the employers want, I think I would look for a new job, because the idea of
we are only as strong as our weakest link.
Bring in these two comments.
To me, digital capabilities and digital skills underpin absolutely everything that life is now. That's what we do. So surely digital capabilities exactly tie into the lofty attitudes and achievements of universities. And in fact,
but everyone here is employed as well. We're not a bunch of unemployed people thinking philosophically about life. Every person here is employed, and your digital capabilities are key to your employment, and it will continue to be so more and more into the future.
So do you not think that your digital capabilities will help you function better in society as well?
I haven't said that they won't, but I'm
but
saying
then you
that
can't
the
say
key
it's purely
thing that
about...
lets me be in society is my employment.
I would say that there's a lot more things you get out of digital capabilities that allow you to function better in society and do other things, not just be employed, to make you a better person. And
I would say being employed is very key to my survival and participation in society.
Thank you very much. That is a great point to move on. The panel and the speakers have agreed to be here till midnight. So if you want to continue questioning them, you can do. I, on the other hand, want to go home at some point today. So what I'd like to do is to bring our motion to a vote using Mentimeter. So everyone can vote, including the speakers. If you need to run up and get your device.
As a certain Irish socialist said, vote early, vote often.
So we have 5 votes so far. We'll give it a minute or so, so other people need to reach around and get their devices and so on.
Steve, you did say that you checked the IP address of the...
Yeah, so Jenny's got a small army of people at the LSE voting one way, and Jim's got a small army of people at UCL voting the other, I suspect.
I've employed all my students.
There are actually 20 people. That's disturbing.
So the code is 571741. And hopefully you get the question. There's just 2 options, agree or disagree. Okay, another 15 seconds. Okay. 31 votes in. I'm going to reveal the answers. 32. That could swing it. That The answer is I disagree. Jim, Jenny, Jim, you convinced the audience here. Maybe they were convinced already. Could you have 20 seconds just to sum up from your side, please?
Yeah. I've always felt this kind of weird guilt that in 1979 I did walk out of Peter House thinking, I don't know how the hell that happened, but for reasons that are completely irrelevant to whether I should be going to get this opportunity, I'm going to Peter House to study classics. Then I'm going to be a solicitor and live in Basingstoke, and I've done nothing to deserve it. And I believe firmly in the transforming power of education. And I also believe that wasn't offered even then equally to everyone. And I believe that, with all my heart, that the employability agenda has been rolled out in such a way as to actually, while ostensibly opening education up to more and more people, to narrow the purpose of education in such a way that only a minority can actually say, do you know what, I am going to spend 3 years of my life studying poetry, and if at the end of it I have to go and be a clerk in an office, so be it. And I think Jeni's lucky to have gone to study English. I'm lucky to. I didn't eventually study classics, so much more practical, theoretical linguistics. I think that employability must not be interpreted in such a way so as to narrow what the value of education is to people, nor must it actually become such an overarching goal of education or of digital skills acquisition that the important aspects of value of digital skills for life are overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to explain your party's defeat and say how you're going to rebuild for the future?
I do think Jim and some of the panel members did a fantastic job of turning this into a question of the purpose of the university as a whole. So, good pivoting. A career in politics ahead of you.
I didn't get to the right college.
But I do think that one of the most important things that came out of the discussion is the focus on the students. Regardless of what we think the purpose of university is or of digital skills development, ultimately the university should be there for the students. Let's leave aside research institutes and the rest, but it is there for the students, and I think we can debate it as much as we like, but if we forget to take account of what are the students' motivation and what is there for the students, and if we do try to reduce them to one thing, I think we are in danger of doing them a great disservice. So it is about the students. I still think they want a job.
Thank you very much, Jeni. Can I ask you to thank Jeni, Steve, Lawrie, Fiona.